and welcome to episode 4 of Grace Notes. I'm joined today by 3 Cathedral Choir members, coincidentally all from the soprano section. So we have with us today Edin Woodard, one of our soprano section leaders, Janelle Anyanonu, a long-serving and faithful choir member, and Connor, who has been at the Cathedral and involved in music his entire life. Welcome. And special guest star, Kitty back there. A festival of 9 lessons and carols is now the Christmas Eve service held in King's College, Cambridge in the UK. The original service was the brainchild of Edward White Benson, the first Bishop of Truro back in 1880. Benson's 9 lessons service has traveled all over the world, not least due to the wonderful annual broadcast from King's College, Cambridge on Christmas Eve. The service we now hear in its current form and format was devised in 1918-1919 by Eric Milner White, who at the age of 34 had just been appointed Dean of King's College, Cambridge. The main theme of the service is the development of the loving purpose of God, seen through the windows and words of the Bible. The musical selections are merely reflections on the word, or perhaps a slightly different take on the word. Since 1919, the service has always started with the hymn, Once in Royal David's City. Connor, as a treble chorister in both the Cathedral choristers and the Cathedral Choir, you have a special affection, perhaps, for this opening hymn of the service. Can you paint the picture of what people coming to this service, maybe for the first time, can expect to see and hear?
Well, it's actually it's a really nice melodic melody. It opens with a really nice solo, the Once in Royal, the first verse of it, and then it continues with a really nice verses and some really nice words. Sorry, my kid is getting in the way. And yeah, the words are really meaningful. I love the first verse especially because that's what I'm most used to. I really like that solo. It just flows together really well, and it's a really nice piece overall.
Can you tell us a little bit about how the soloist for verse 1 gets traditionally selected?
Well, they go around and they just see who can sing it best most of the time.
Mm-hmm. And is it something that you're aware of, that you're going to be singing that solo, like this weeks and months in advance?
I've known this solo for the good majority of my life. When I first sung it, I was practicing a couple of months in advance. And even after I've sang it, like a month after I've sang it in the middle of summer, I'm just practicing it.
Right. And the selection process kind of comes down right to the wire, right? It's usually on the day, just before the service, someone is chosen to sing that solo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but there are usually many of you that are very well prepared to sing it. What's one of the things that, as someone who's sung that solo many times, what's one of the things that you consider as you sing it when you're looking out at 300 or 400 people? What are you considering? What are you thinking of?
I'm just kind of thinking of, this is all for God. It's all for God, and just sing it so that he can enjoy it.
Great. I love that answer. That's wonderful. Well, one of the first carols that we'll be singing, congregational carols, is a setting of the 15th century text Adam Lay Bounden by living British composer Andrew Cusworth. And Connor, you chose this carol to talk about, so tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I really love the bass on it. I've never gotten to sing it because I'm a soprano, but I just love the opening part. It's just a really nice opening. And then it's not a very big part, but all the ahs and stuff, they add a lot to the piece. Whether it's the altos, the tenors, or sopranos singing it, it just adds so much going through it.
And it's a wonderful text because it dates back, 500 plus years, right? It's one of those ancient medieval texts that we've got numerous wonderful musical settings of. And can you tell us a little bit about what the poem is based on? Like, what are we singing about?
Uh, all I know is that there's an apple and someone took it, I think, and that's it. I've never been really too versed in the words. I really like the melody and song portion of it.
So if you're thinking about that text, Adam lay bound in a bond for 4,000 winters he thought were not too long, and all was for an apple that he took, as clerics, probably old monks, right, now find written in their book. So here's the positive message in that: if the apple had never taken bean, then we wouldn't necessarily have Our Lady, our heavenly queen, right? The mother of Jesus. We wouldn't necessarily have the rest of the story if someone hadn't taken the apple, right? When you said, oh, it's all something about an apple. Yeah, that's kind of critical to the story. Absolutely. Our second congregational hymn is Lo, How a Rose Are Blooming, with a musical setting by the prolific German composer Michael Praetorius, who holds two important anniversary dates this year in 2021, birth and death. Edin, you chose this hymn to talk about.
Yes. So I think it dates back to the 15th century. It's a German hymn and has a lot to do with Mary and the association of the rose. And I think there was a little bit of debate even whether I think they're talking about a branch or a rose, right? I read a little bit about that, but I really love this hymn because there's so much rhythmic variety. And I didn't sing this hymn growing up. I really sang it for the first time in college with you, and it's just really near and dear to my heart. It makes me think of my sweet friends and singing it with them. So I love this hymn.
You bring up the rhythm of the hymn, and I think a lot of those hymns that were originally tunes off the street that then came into the sort of sacred space, and I think this is one of those quote dance tunes from the street that made their way into church. And this is the way that composers and musicians and clerics too were trying to get people off the streets, out of the pubs. Hey, come into church. You can still hear your favorite songs, but, with obviously new words. Michael Praetorius was especially a genius at cultivating that. One of the new anthems that we'll be sharing this year is a setting of the text O Lux Beatissima, set by the American composer Howard Helvey. And I chose this because both the text and the music are, well, simply gorgeous. Next week, of course, is the winter solstice, and come December 23rd, we'll have just passed through that darkest, longest of nights. And so this is a little bit of the text. O light, most blessed, fill the inmost heart of all thy faithful, and kindle your light in our minds, infuse your love into our hearts, strengthen the frailties of our flesh by your perpetual power. And of course, we're singing it in Latin, so in some ways it sticks differently to us, right, when we're singing it in Latin versus English. One of the anthems that we learned 2 Decembers ago became a bit of a showstopper for us, especially last year during the height of the pandemic, when we had to become quite inventive in how and where we met to rehearse and record. And Edin, you asked to speak specifically about Luli Lula Lule by British composer Philip Stopford.
Well, I'm really excited to sing this piece. I sadly didn't get to sing this last year with the choir. They made a really beautiful recording in the parking garage, very distanced, and it was just so beautiful. And I'm really excited to sing it with everyone this year. It's like a lullaby, and being a new mother, I really relate to it. I use it to sing my baby to sleep a lot, actually. And there's a lot of dissonance between the parts. And as a choir member, you love to sing into those dissonances and kind of feel that gentle rocking that's constant within the piece. And there's a gorgeous solo sung by Jordan that kind of sits over the top and just floats, and it's just really meditative. I feel like, yeah, I love it.
And in that video that you mentioned, for folks who don't necessarily know where to find that video, the Cathedral does have a pretty extensive collection of YouTube videos now up on their YouTube channel, St. John's ABQ, I believe it is, St.John's ABQ. And so you can find all of our virtual choir projects and all of our services and just everything, and grace notes, of course. Find that all on our YouTube channel. Janelle, this year we are also including a new setting of the Nunc Dimittis by the British composer Cecilia McDowell. We have some special connections with Cecilia, and so Janelle, I'd just love to hear from you about your memories of Cecilia and everything about Cecilia.
Oh, well, she's the sweetest woman, and it's her personality matches her composer style. It's very, I don't want to say understated, because that's not really what I mean, but like there's just a lot of sparkle in the subtleties. She's not very loud, she's very soft spoken, but she still at the same time has a very commanding presence. Like you're very aware of when she's in the room, but she's not loud at all. She is not loud at all. And she's very calm and calming. And her music is very similar to, she kind of just like writes her personality, I think. I was talking to Edin earlier today about her and how she loves writing for the female voice. She does it so well. And I love singing her pieces because well, first of all, they always sit very comfortably for me. I'm like, oh yeah, this is right where my voice wants to be. And I really appreciate in the Nunc Dimittis specifically how it's the Song of Simeon, and we traditionally hear that from when we do a Nunc Dimittis setting and there's any kind of solo. It's traditionally sung by a male part, being the Song of Simeon. You know, it's this old man in the temple seeing the Christ child and being like, oh, well, I can die happy now. And so to have this Dimittis setting set by her, where it's not a solo necessarily, but the individual voicing is set for a female voice, which is very different. But I absolutely love the way she's done it. It kind of gives the whole text a new perspective. Just because we know that the Magnificat is sung from the point of view of Mary, to sing the Nunc Dimittis from a female point of view, it just made me look at it, kind of look at the text kind of from my point of view. And yeah, it's just a new and really exciting way to think about that text. So I love that Nunc. I'm very excited to sing it. I've only done it in rehearsals, but it's absolutely gorgeous. So I'm excited to hear it all.
It's a brand new setting that I don't even know if it's actually been recorded yet, because it sort of came out just, I think, on the precipice of us all heading into the pandemic. And so not very many choirs have had the opportunity to learn it as ensembles yet. So I'm very excited about bringing another work of Cecilia's into our repertoire, certainly. And I love that idea of the text, you know, not being gender specific and not being necessarily attached to a particular voice type. So I think there's a lot there that will be appreciated by our listeners, certainly. One of the more exuberant carols that we sing as part of the Lessons in Carols service is Sir Christmas by William Matthias. So Connor, let's talk a little bit about this one.
It's like you were talking about earlier, it's kind of one of those folky pieces. It's very upbeat and it kind of makes you want to get up and just dance. It's just like get your tapping shoes on, get on the table, and just start dancing as the best you can.
Right.
It kind of starts off slow in a way, like kind of leading up to something, but then it kind of builds up pretty fast with little Noels and then Sir Christmas, and then all that comes in. And I like how it incorporates the altos and the basses in different ways. And so like Sir Christmas, when Sir Christmas is responding, it's like the male voice parts, the tenors and basses. But then who's greeting them at the door is the altos and the sopranos, just kind of sitting inside, staying warm.
Love that. And this text is kind of curious, right? Because it's called a macaronic text, which means that we've got a number of different languages kind of going on here. So we've got a smattering of French, buvez bien, you know, especially you guys are going to sing it in the French Canadian accent, which is always very exciting. And then we have the Latin text coming in, right? And then a little bit of English, I believe, as well, right? So that macaronic text, that's kind of unique to it. William Matthias, we've sung some other pieces by him, and we obviously sing some of his service music in our hymnal. So that's a composer that's very well known to all of us. Now on Christmas Eve, we also have a host of wonderful hymns and carols and anthems and a lovely, lovely Mass setting. Janelle, let's talk a little bit about Missa ad Precipe, Mass at the Crib, written in 1959 by the devout Roman Catholic George Malcolm.
So the portion of the Mass that I want to focus on, I guess, that I consider my favorite, is the Gloria. And so, of course, I associate this Mass exclusively with Christmas. It's very Christmas sounding. My favorite thing about the Gloria is just the range of energies. It begins and ends a little more gently. And we sing it at the 11 o'clock. It's for the midnight Mass, so it's already pretty late at night. It's still extremely buoyant and extremely festive and joyous, but it's a subdued joy. It's relaxed joy, and it builds to lots of different crescendos, and still get like super bright. And we're singing like Fortissimo, and the organ's rocking, but then at the end, it ends very gently, and I absolutely love that, how it like is this arc of energies, and we're so excited for Christ to be born, but you know it's 11:30, and we're gonna keep it calm still. We get really excited and then we bring it back down. So I think that, yeah, the end of that Gloria is one of my absolute favorites. It's so I can't find, I should have gotten my thesaurus out. I need my words, but yeah, I just love how it brings the energy back down and like makes it very introspective. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it begins that way and it kind of ends the same.
It reminds me a little bit about something that the bishop mentioned after he heard the Philip Stopford piece for the first time, and he commented on how incarnational it was. It's sort of this almost sense of foreshadowing of what's to come, and we all know the story, so we know what's to come in 3, 4, 5 months time, but at the same time we're allowed to still live in that joyful bubble for just tonight.
Exactly, yes. It's very that, yeah. It's I'm having trouble finding my words, but yes, it is very expressive of like all the series of emotions that one goes through Advent and into Christmas, anticipation and the joy, and then like the having of that joy. So like it's the excitement of like building up and, oh, I get to open this present, and then you have it, and then you're like, oh yeah, and you just get to hold it and and be happy with it. It's yeah, it really, I think, represents that range of emotion really well in the music.
And I think too, especially for choir, we've been on the journey to Christmas maybe a little sooner than most folks out there in the pew, and so we've been kind of already grappling with those texts and looking ahead at those texts. But yet at the same time, we have to kind of live in the present and be like, oh yeah, no, it's still Advent 3 or it's still Advent 4, and we're not quite there yet. And for us choir members, I think, and musicians at the cathedral, it's always an interesting time because we're already there, but yet we have to pull ourselves back into the present.
Yes, and I think in the and you see that in that mass setting in the Gloria, and the choir kind of represents the outward emotion that you show, but then there's this amazing soprano solo that Edin, I believe, is doing, Edin or Jordan will be doing, and that the soprano line in that Gloria always kind of reminds me of what I'm thinking, of the thoughts that I have, the emotion that I keep inside for myself, my excitement of like, woo! So the choir is a good representative of how I express that emotion outwardly, but then that little soprano line is like, no, I'm really excited. That's always what that reminds me of.
This has just been delightful. Thank you all for joining me. I hope that those of you who are listening to this broadcast, that you'll be able to join us in person or over the live stream for all of the services offered at the cathedral this coming week, especially as we celebrate the birth of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So until next time, sometime in 2022, we wish you much joy and peace and love throughout Christmastide, and look for episode 5 of Grace Notes sometime in 2022. Connor and Edin and Janelle, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.